This is time for free your mind and your soul. Yo, half the story has never been told. Ladies, you got to demand what you want, and what we want is respect, right? Yo, just sit up on the track, I don't say you have to feel it right. Freedom every time for the sisters. Check this. Watch this.
And here we go now. Listen, if I'm boom rule, I be the ruler like Slick Rick. Hit with this quick-witted Adidas wearing chick. Papa got a brand new bag. Mama got a brand new Jag or go tag. I ain't no old hag. I represent not only in the kitchen, in the bedroom, but also in the boardroom. So give me more room. Deny my opportunity, you in jeopardy. Yo, set me free, don't hinder me, let me be.
I'm fighting for freedom, I got the heat in case you need them. Straight soldier, ain't nobody told ya. Hold up on them lies, I know your games and your plans.
Hello. Oh, I'm going to remove that. You don't need that in your line of sight. It's not very exciting to look at. Hello, welcome everybody to the Book Slam Extra. I am your host, Jules. I hope everyone is doing okay and has had a really good weekend and has had a fabulous week as well. I am a dark fantasy author. I also sort of delve into science fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons and sword and sorcery and all that kind of stuff. I also obviously work here, and I also am a publisher as well. And I'm very excited about some of the books that are in the wings as we speak, in the process of getting that done. So we're looking forward to 2024. It's going to be a good year. So we're talking a little bit about today about characterization and how we develop our characters and why we make them the way that we have. And the importance of using our characters within dialogue. I mean, if we look at any of our stories or poems, our characters are the central key part of that. And so they're an essential part of writing, but not everyone knows how to write them. Some people find it difficult researching. Some people find it really difficult separating their own personality from the characters they've got on the page. I do have to apologise, though, for my tardiness today. I ended up spilling a lot of water all over my computer yesterday, and my computer's been drying out since. And so it was like touch and go as to whether it was going to work or not. So I was just trying to make sure that it was fully functional before I actually started. So apologies for that. Yeah. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to invite my wonderful co-host to the stream. He's laughing at me already.
Hi. Yes, I am laughing. That's hilarious. I'm sorry you dumped water all over your computer. That's terrible. That's not good at all.
So was I. What was really funny was I was actually at the very beginning of a lesson with a student, and I swore quite loudly and quite frankly, and I had to check myself because she's still underage. She's like 13. So I was like, oh, sorry.
That's hilarious. Jeez.
Yeah. It was, it was like this for some reason. I put it on my desk and it was undone. And I reached forward to move a wire out of the way, which was cutting off the screen a little bit. And as I moved it, it just, yeah. But it works. Yay. The Brutal. Computer gods love me.
Brutal.
How are you anyway?
Hi. Anyway, I'm Adam Andrews Johnson. I've written The Mantis Gland, The Mantis Variant, Mantis Equilibrium. It's a three-part book so far, and there are more coming. It's dark fantasy, grimdark, dystopian. People are hunting each other. It's pretty gory to begin with, and there's a little bit more hope as the story goes on, but it's pretty messed up. So yeah, that's what I've got. And Jules is also releasing my completely separate book that is high fantasy, epic adventure stuff with strong focus on human sexuality and queer people and stuff like that. So it's a big celebration of humans, and that's coming out next year, 2024, like she was talking about. And I want to mention to everybody, we are in multiple continents. We have some people on the East Coast, some people on the West Coast. Jules, you're in the UK. So we get a little glitchy sometimes. We get a little lag once in a while. So I hope that's not too much of a problem, but yeah,
it's always nice just to be super helpful. And what's really cool is when you say we're in multiple places, we're also in multiple places online too, which includes Facebook, YouTube, and also Twitter. So you're welcome to come and join us on any of those platforms. But if you really want to get involved with the action and you have some questions or comments that you want to actually ask the authors that we're going to have on in a minute, you're very welcome to join us over on YouTube and post your comments there. Join in the fun, join in the discussion.
Oh, are we getting an echo? Can you hear an echo? I don't hear an echo. I've got my volume cranked all the way
I
up.
don't have an echo my end. No.
Uh-oh. Hold on. I'm gonna mute my computer real quick and
Let me
that's not
mute
gonna work, is it?
people as
I wanted to
well.
do it on my phone. We're getting an
Can
echo
you
on my
say-
phone. Hello?
It's like, did you ever used to watch a TV show called Trigger Happy TV?
I don't know what that is now.
So a while ago, people our age in the UK will probably remember this. They used to have this skit where the guy would be walking along with his whopping great big telephone and be like, hello, I can't quite hear you. And be walking around shops and all sorts of things. I think it was like a prank channel. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of that with technology nowadays. It still doesn't work. It doesn't matter how modern we get. I do have a question for you though, which I think might be interesting for you. Is I'm writing dark fantasy, and you're writing grim dark. What's the difference?
I think grim dark has a very strong focus on dystopia and gore and horror elements, and dark fantasy likes to deal with heavy, scary stuff, but I think tends to be more palatable. Like the very first chapter of my book, everybody keeps telling me it's gruesome and disgusting, and you're not going to probably find that in many dark fantasy, but in grimdark, I think that's it. And like the gritty backdrop, there's every definition I've seen of grimdark has mention of the world building as being dystopian, end of the worldy type vibe.
So it's kind of like a blend between dark fantasy and dystopian kind of mixed together.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, throw the horror in there as well. Whereas I think dark fantasy gives it the more maybe sword and sandal, sword and sorcery, Dungeons and Dragons-y vibe, like we've talked about. But yeah. I don't have any of that in my stuff.
No. Dark fantasy tends to focus a bit more on the darker elements of life with fantasy. So you have possible orcs and elves and, sort of typical fantasy type themes. But rather than imagining that someone's just been killed or just having it mentioned that so-and-so has just been killed or whatever, you actually have it in more detail. But it also tends to focus on the darker aspects of life. So whereas fantasy itself, we talk about Tolkien, for example, tends to focus more on adventure and heroes and saving the day and everything else like that. Dark fantasy tends to have more of a bent towards, abuse and
stuff going wrong. Yeah.
All the things that are kind of like going on in fantasy, but it's kind of hidden. You just have to make assumptions. So it's quite interesting, all the different genres, but it's really difficult, I think, nowadays to pigeonhole books in just one specific genre, because I think lots of books have very, very mixed kind of genres going on for them.
Well, and I think the more genres we come up with, the more terms we have, the more diversity, the more we fall into multiple categories. If it's horror, sci-fi, fantasy, then it's easy to separate those things out. But if it's all these other more nuanced descriptions of the styles, I think that, it ends up blending pretty beautifully.
Yeah, it does. And what's really interesting is character development, in different genres does actually take, I suppose, different steps to get towards the end result, doesn't it? Yes. Because you have to look at what your story main theme is, and then look at, well, how does this character fit with that theme? How can I create a character that works in that environment? So, we take Reese's characters, for example, one of our other co-hosts, who we miss. We miss you, Reese. Come back. She has characters that are very much based in our world as it is today.
Very realistic.
Yeah, very realistic. And the characters, one of them wears a suit, one of them wears a dress that you would wear to, really black and white suit gathering, black tie gathering, and things like that. Whereas in dark fantasy, for example, my characters don't do that. They tend to wear like raggedy leathers and sheep's skin clothing and wolf skin, and I suppose the typical clothing that you would see from a previous age, from the Vikings, Celts, and various other historical groups.
Totally.
What about your one with the grim dark?
Honestly, I put so much focus in the fantasy, the starting end that you're releasing next year. I put so much focus on the character development in that I wanted this to be more about the story. And so I've got characters and I've given them really bizarre names in some cases, just to be weird, and almost no descriptions at all in some cases.
Yeah.
Somebody might be tall. One person I described as a little bit more muscular than her friends. One of them typically wears really baggy clothes, so you can't really see much about her. She's very indistinct, and that's exactly how she wants to be. But yeah, I don't actually put much into it. And then I think their characters sort of come out in their dialogue and what they do. One of them's had a really horrible past, and so she wants to help as many people as she can, and she's trying to save people. One girl grew up in a village, and she's trying to just make her way in the city now. So it's just who they are, set behind this backdrop of people hunting each other, and it's all messed up, and the world's really terrible. So yeah.
Do you find that you are able to separate your own self from the character that you're creating? Because I know that's an issue that lots of very new authors in particular struggle with, where they're trying to create this unique individual and they're then trying to draw inspiration from other people. But then they're also very aware that, you know, you're not actually allowed to base it on someone in real life because, you know.
We won't say based on reality, but there are people in my book who I took straight from reality. Yeah, no, totally. I think that for me, focusing on a specific part of a person's character's personality and then making that shine for them. So that's sort of the thing that sticks out. So every time you deal with them, Agro, my one character who's always trying to save people, that's her thing. She's very timid, but she's like, I want to help. You know, that's constantly her thing. And she's I don't want to go into too much detail at the moment, but yeah, that's who she is. And every time she pops back up into a scene, that's who that's her personality. Yeah.
Nice. I think it's okay to draw from people that we know or people that have been in our lives in one way or another. But I think it's more drawing like small aspects of that and create, you know, emote, because there's only really certain types of aspects of personality, isn't there? There's only a finite amount, you know. You can have a whole plethora of different personalities, but each person has aspects. So that you can kind of like put down to a particular style of behaving or a particular style or method of just talking or being. So I think it's quite good to be able to draw from that, but I think it's important to have a distinction between the fiction and the non-fiction.
I will say if I had to pick one person from this series, my drag queen Auntie Peg, she is me. She is me. Every answer she has, every decision she makes, it's the decision I would make in real life. She's totally me. Nice. Everybody else is either based on somebody else or, like I said, a personality type that I wanted to shine through. Yeah. Do you have anyone that's cool. Like, do you feel like is directly you in your book?
I think probably I would say Ray, who's my protagonist. I would say she's probably my alter. Cool. She does all the things that I would probably like to be able to do, but just don't. But I don't know. I do think there's little bits of me in her sister, and I do think there's a little bit of me in Ash as well. So Ash and Nayli are the two young girls. Nayli is her younger sister, and Ash is the younger sister of Raven. And so I do feel there's probably a little bit, but I don't think I've really kind of recreated a me in it. For sure, if I could choose any character, I would definitely be Ray, because I think she's
like you. She's like the epitome. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, she's like the me that I could potentially be, but never actually be. That's the motivation.
Well, I'm curious to see what our guests have to say. And one of our guests, I must have messed up the link. I've got a message. I got to send them a better link because the link I sent is wrong. So why don't we bring everybody in and start to have them introduce themselves while I resend this link real quick?
Sounds good. Right, let me see if I can do that. Hang on. Nope, wrong button. See, I told you I'm rubbish. Let me try that one again. Okay. We've got a few people. Hello. I think I've muted a couple of you whilst I was just sorting out if there was a. Hang on, oh yeah, that's it. Cool. Chelsea, if you unmute yourself as well. I think both of us are fighting over the mute button.
Uh-oh.
You know where it is? Yourself as well.
There we go. Hey, hi everybody.
I think both of us are fighting over the mute button.
Uh-oh.
You know where it is? Yourself as well.
There we go. Hey, hi everybody.
Fighting over the mute button. Seconds.
What is going on?
Chelsea, I think that's you. Have you got volume up on anything else other than the computer or the iPad or whatever you're using on? Don't worry, we have sound issues. I have sound issues all the time. It's absolutely fine. Whatever you're using on. No. Don't worry, we have sound issues. I have sound issues all the time. It's absolutely fine. Whatever you're using on. No. Don't worry, we have sound issues. What I'm going to do, Chelsea, because I think it is coming from yours. I'll give you a. Don't worry. Don't panic. It's absolutely fine. Just take your time. Don't worry. If you need time to go off, that's absolutely fine. I have issues all the time, don't I? Always clicking the wrong button and take your time. Hello, welcome people. Nice to see you all. Hope you're all right.
Hello.
Welcome. Nice to see you again.
Why don't we one at a time just go through and introduce ourselves? Fozzie, you want to go first? You want to tell us about yourself and a little bit about your work and where we can get your book and its title and everything?
Sure. My name's Fozzie. I hail from Florida. I'm in the States. I just published my first book, Always by My Side. It's available on Amazon under Jason Fozzie Nelson. That's the author name that I go under. I just published. And I've seen friends and family get copies so far. I'm just that's the scariest part, as we all know.
Yeah, it's your first book's always very scary because you're sending it out into the big wide world, and it almost is a bit like you're inviting the whole world back in.
Right.
That's fantastic news. Well done, you. Okay.
Holly, would you like to go next and tell us a little bit about what you've written?
Hi, I'm Holly. I'm out of Washington State, and I'm writing a children's book series. I've got one book finished, another one I'm still working on and working with a consultant on. But it's about an elephant who's growing up, and sort of my goal with the book is to incorporate what stages of child development a 3-year-old is at and experiencing in the process of all of these books in the experiences that she has, so that parents get some sort of a background to what they can expect or look for in their child, or how to incorporate lessons about the world into their day-to-day activities with their kids.
Nice.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Very creative.
It's
Excellent.
an area that's very close to my heart. Yeah. Very nice. Well, we look forward to hearing more about that. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Is Elisa or Alyssa?
Alyssa.
Alyssa, welcome. Please tell us all about your work as well.
I'm currently writing a YA fantasy series about a girl in a magical school, but, well, she can't cast spells and she has a human dad, so that's causing all kinds of problems.
Okay.
So, book 1 is already out. It's this one, Towers of Nine.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm currently have 2 books of it out, working on a 3rd. There's going to be a bunch more. I don't know how many more yet. We're working on it.
Excellent.
And it's all published through Amazon, so you
Okay.
can find it there.
Yep. Awesome. And Chelsea, I think we've got the sound issue taken care of. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself as well? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Chelsea, can you hear me? Uh-oh. Okay. We're trying to figure it out.
No, that's okay. Why don't let me I'll message her. I'll message them and hang on a second. Do you have contact details with Chelsea?
Yes. Yeah, I can reach out. Sorry.
If you message them,
Yeah.
then we can. I can open up the discussion.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm a fantasy author, and I think I'm like 10 to 15 seconds behind you guys.
Yes.
So I am really sorry. I don't know what issues I'm having.
Do not worry. We have we have sometimes a delay because we go all over the place in terms of worldwide places and internet connections and storms and whole issues. So do not worry at all. We're just glad to have you here. Okay, so I'm going to open up the discussion. Put it to all of you, really. So whilst Adam's messaging Chelsea, we no, you're fine. It's fine. I have book covers, by the way. So if you're happy to do some reading, then I can put your book cover on the screen. If you also would like me to share links, if you put them in the private chat, I will very gladly share them as well in the chat, so people can actually get access to your book and potentially buy them. Okay, so question. With character design and creation, what's your go-to method that you use that has worked for you? And this is an open question to everyone, so you can, just join in whenever you feel like you need to. Anytime you have anything you want to say.
Hey, Chelsea, let's just check. Can you hear us immediately, or is there still a delay? Okay. All right. We're still having issues. All right. Well,
I'm mute Chelsea so that there's no background noise. But sorry, I apologise for the audio issues that we're having. Sometimes it does happen. Okay. Open question to you all.
Well, I know for me personally, it's always the character's personality and voice comes first, and like the last thing I think about is what they look like, and like what. And so for me, it's personality, voice, and then general backstory details, and then maybe abilities, like what it is that they can do or do in the story, and then any like physical traits are last. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah, absolutely. Is there a reason why you've chosen to do it that way round?
That's typically what just comes to me first. Like so I tend to write very voice heavy, so that tends to be what I think about first.
When you're talking about voice heavy, what does that look like on the page? Can you describe that?
There's a lot of the characters' like internal life. Like this is first person perspective, so we see, for everything that the character actually says or does, we hear just paragraphs of just her thinking about things and how she's processing information. So
that's cool. I always find first person. I write in first person, and it's an interesting window into that person's way of thinking. Is yours like a stream of consciousness more than like just thoughts and actions, or is it kind of a mixture of both, or is it something different?
From the people who have read it, they tend to describe it as more stream of consciousness kind of vibe. So I'm gonna go with yes.
It's all right, mine's a bit like that too. You have like the inner workings of this person's head, and it's a bit of a mess sometimes. But that's cool. So when you create the voice, the inner voice of your character, is that then that kind of leads you down that pathway of then developing a character that can actually, become a real tangible thing within the story. How do you kind of work out what they're going to look like? How do you go from the sort of voice to the appearance?
Well, since I get voice and personality first, I'm like, okay, what would lead a person to be like this? How does a person become this kind of way? And then kind of work backwards from there. Admittedly, I don't have a lot of like specific details of appearances on characters, unless it's like a very specific thing or aspect of them. Like I would say the character who I have the most clear physical description of is the one character who her appearance is actually like a big part of her story. Everyone else is kind of blurry.
I think that's really interesting, because I think when you've got your focus is on the person rather than just the appearance, not only can that be quite a compelling story in the sense of it really draws the reader in and enables the reader to conjure up their own imaginings of what the people look like. So it becomes multiracial in that sense, which I think is really cool. It's a good concept. So what doesn't work? Like when you're sort of creating it, have you found methods that you kind of think, oh no, that's a bit crap. I'm not going to do that again. Sorry, I'm not pounding you with questions. I do apologize, and everyone else is joining too.
It's fine. Some of these things are not things I've put that much thought into at this point, so I don't have answers for everything. So far, I haven't run into any like significant problems, except maybe one or two bits of awkwardness where out of nowhere the main character will just announce that one of the characters is actually significantly taller than her, and even though we're in the middle of book 3 and this has never come up before.
I think
I have a little insight on that topic. I would say, like, with my character, I had her in my second book doing a specific activity with counting, and then I'm consulting with my therapist, who's a human development guru about everything that she's studied. And she made a point to remind me that at that age, they're not counting normally, and that I needed to adjust the story to fit like how children at that age are just saying numbers because they hear the numbers and they don't know that there's an order to them or a reason with it. So it changed how my story was formatted in that one so that her activity looks a little different from what I was going for with the lesson plan. But yeah, it takes some adjusting and research when you have something like specific like that. But how I got to that character in the first place was just based on students that I had.
I think
Welcome
back on. Hope we're good.
Hello.
Hi, Renee. Welcome. Glad you're able to join us also. Sorry I screwed up the link I sent to you. I apologize so much for that.
No worries.
It's fine. Chelsea, are you sorted now? Is your sound sorted? Can you hear us? I know Chelsea was having some problems.
I can hear you.
Yes? Oh, good.
No, that was me. I was doing.
Oh.
Chelsea, I can hear everything.
Oh, no,
Chelsea.
All right, hey, I'm gonna jump off with Chelsea and try and figure this out.
Yeah, that's fine. You jump off. That's fine. You leave me with a. You go and sit on the naughty step.
I'm so sorry.
How you just decided she was Southern, gave her an accent and a character and everything.
Yeah.
We're straight out for the conversation that we're having, which is about character development and dialogue. So it's like kind of, but it's however many minutes per your age. So it's what we're looking at.
Oh God, is that how you do punishments?
Yeah.
Oh boy, I might retire by the time I get out of that corner.
We'll see at 5 to 10.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a question on this topic for the other writers and you as well, Jules, if you would indulge me for a second. Does anybody else cast their characters with actors, musicians, people you know? Do you cast when you write?
My characters are all like based on my students that I taught as a preschool teacher, and then my brother and his family.
Okay.
I'm pulling in another character. When I have a brother who he's first made on a catamaran in Hawaii, and I'm so proud of like how cool that job is. So I'm like, you're gonna be a character. So there's gonna be a captain character that's based off of him, and what they look like is kind of different. Like I have a character who's an elephant and her dad is a velociraptor, and then the captain character is going to be a vegetable. Like I'm just taking all the anything that I can anthropomorphize and make into a human character and personality.
I was just about to check that. Is it an actual vegetable we're talking about? That's cool.
It's a pickle, yeah.
Not a medical vegetable.
Yeah.
I like it. That's cool. I can add to that. So I actually work in the opposite way to you, Alyssa, in the sense that I do have the voice, but I need to know what they look like, because I need to know how it fits with the story that I'm creating. And then once I've got their, key bits of appearance, I then start thinking about, well, what kind of personality does that lead to? And I'm not saying that appearance is everything, because I know it's not in the real world, but in terms of non-fiction writing, that's how I do it. But it was actually seeing, I don't know if any of you have seen Euphoria, but I saw a still image of when Zendaya was in her like complete messed out state and her hair was everywhere and she just looked horrendous. I was like, that's what she looks like. That's my main character. Mm-hmm. So from there, I can then create a character who fit that appearance, that kind of not giving a shit what she looked like. And it was more about what was going on in her world and not caring what anybody else looked like or what anybody else did. It was just a sole fix on what she was doing. So yeah, so I do, but not obviously like everything.
So I have this ability. I've had it since I was young, where I never forget a face. I'll meet somebody and I'll remember the face till the day I die. I might not know their name or anything about them, but I remember meeting someone. Like I can see someone years later and be like, oh yeah, we met at that party back in 2002. I've always had that ability. And because of that, a lot of times when I start to write a character, I'll go through a Rolodex of just like images of people in my mind and find one that I think fits the character that I'm trying to write. So it's kind of a mixture of both. I have an idea of the character and the voice, and then I'm trying to find the picture at the same time. So I kind of do it all in one. Occasionally, as I write a character, an image will come to mind, and then I cast them with someone. But usually very holistic. It all happens all at once.
Yeah, I think it's weird, isn't it? Because we spend all our lives being told, oh no, appearance isn't everything. But then when it comes to writing, actually it's a real key aspect of our characters, because if you've got a character who, and I don't know how many films or TV shows you guys watch, but if you watch lots of superhero movies, particularly 10 years ago, the women in particular, if they went to sleep, they'd wake up like pristine. Mm-hmm. There's no dribble marks on the pillow, and there's no like that eye snot that you get in the corners of your eyes, and they're and all that other
that waking up with perfect makeup at 5 a.m. that never happens. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. I'd love that to happen, but yeah. So I think when you're writing fiction, you have to kind of write it in a way that's realistic for what's going on. If you've got a character that's doing that, then what kind of world would they fit in? Would they fit in a world where there's war and there's the world is ravaged by famine, or the world is ravaged by monsters, or or would they fit better in as a lawyer in a or a barrister or something? So I do think appearance is a key aspect of character development for sure.
My ex
and it's also sorry, it's also some aspects of.
It's also right. Just jump in whenever you need to. It's cool.
Sure. I'm not always sure if I'm interrupting or if it's lag. So
there is a slight lag, so it's fine. Don't worry. We're all mindful of it. It's fine.
So I find that appearance and personality aren't independent of each other, right? So if you're someone who, like in my case, I'm very short. I'm exactly 5 foot. That's 153 centimeters. And so that has influenced things like my confidence, or things that the way that I have to present myself, but also the way that people react to me. Like I can essentially get away with murder because I'm small and cute, So some 6 foot football player, whatever. We're from the US and the UK and everything. So just imagine whatever you want when I say football player. Someone like that won't be able to act the same way as me just because of their appearance. So it's not, I think a lot of times we want to say that appearance isn't everything because we don't want to be judgmental. But the reality is, in a very non-judgmental way, it does influence personality. So to me, it's always important to have at least general things like height and build, and is this person considered attractive by the general population or not? That sort of thing is part of the character development.
Sure.
So
I think, I think you
Makes sense.
accidentally also hit on. Oh, sorry.
I was just saying that made sense. You're good.
So I like people to be able to, you know, join in. I think it's really great when we have, you know, really fluid discussions and that everyone has the opportunity to speak. So I'm quite happy to sit back and you know, let people talk in front of me. So if you want to join in, then please just jump in front of me. It's fine. I think you've hit on something really important there, but I think you said it by mistake or without realizing that you kind of said it. You said the word football, and if you think of the word football over here, well, we're talking about soccer, which is obviously, you know, what it's called in America. And our football players, I would definitely not pitch them against your football players because they're wussies. It's like, oh, I broke a nail kind of thing. Whereas our rugby players, I think our rugby players might beat your football players quite a bit.
They don't wear like, you know, helmets. They just
that's it. They just,
you know, South Africa is the best rugby playing country in the world. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I work with a family that have a link to that, which is quite cool. So yeah, I think in terms of language on its own, that can obviously trigger independent, you know, ideas and assumptions about what people look like or behave like according to the culture that that person's in. And so I think that's also an important aspect of character development, that you're mindful, not you guys, obviously, generally speaking, that you're mindful of how you're going to portray it. So I don't know if you've heard of the computer game Horizon Zero Dawn or Horizon Forbidden West.
Oh, I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
No, you don't. I mean, you don't have to be like in-depth knowledge or anything about it, but it got hammered a little bit in the critics because they said that it was appropriating different cultures. And so they had like Norse mythology, they had Native American, they had Aztec, they had a whole range of different cultures that were tribes in the game. Now, I think it's really difficult because, I mean, I've played the game and I can see it, but I don't think it's appropriation personally, but then I'm not part of all those cultures. So, you know, it's really difficult for me to make that judgment. But then how does the audience perceive that? Is that something that is a barrier to that particular storytelling? And I suppose the same thing happens in our books as well, doesn't it? So I'm going to ask you another question then. What about dialogue? How do you formulate dialogue in your writing?
It sort of happens. That's a terrible answer, but so I must say, for my current book that I've been working on for years, and it's still ongoing. It's a very kind of it's based on a lot of the books that I've read growing up. So Biggles, don't know if you've heard of it. British sort of military and Air Force stories that I was sort of raised with. And there's a very specific kind of speech that those characters use, the sort of World War I soldier speech, a very specific kind of humor as well. Yes. Sorry?
I said, what ho, chaps?
yeah, literally. Yes, one of my characters, that's his catchphrase. He'll walk into a room and just say, what ho, lads? So I've got the sort of inspiration that I draw from, and then I've got three main characters, and they're each from a slightly different culture, and that I'm at least passingly familiar with. And the one guy he's just leaning fully into this World War I speech, and it's put on because he's actually sort of Polish coded, but he's putting this on because that's the dominant culture where he lives. And then there's another one who's just South African, Afrikaans. That's my culture. So I flavor his speech with language that I'm familiar with, and so on. So I draw from real world inspiration and fiction, and just sort of think how this character would speak, what mannerisms they would authentically have, and what they would put on. And then I just sort of put that in the dialogue, and they also influence each other. So the one guy who's really leaning into this idiom, which is an affectation in his case, he's influenced his best friend, who is also from a different culture where they don't really talk like that. But the more they speak to each other, the more the younger one sort of starts to speak like the older one because he respects it.
I think when you said Biggles, I literally had this sort of suction back to my childhood. Because we had those books as well, and that and the Hardy Boys.
Yes, me too. And everything by Enid Blyton, just everything.
Yeah, I love the Famous Five. I'm not so keen on the Secret Seven, but the Famous Five and Mallory Towers are really good.
Yes, Mallory Towers. So few people know that. When I bring up Enid Blyton, that's not many people go to that one, and that was my favorite book series growing up.
Daryl and her best friend Sally, who hated each other in year one, and Gwendolyn and Daphne.
And Gwendolyn, what was it? Gwendolyn Mary Lacey.
Oh, I can't remember her second and third name. I just remember the name Gwendolyn. Yeah. I also remember growing up mispronouncing the name Irene. I used to think that her name was Iron. I was really disappointed when I found out it was Irene, and I was like, oh, that's a bit crap.
I think that's
very normal.
Millions of Americans reading the Harry Potter books and then finding out it's not Hermione.
Me too. I was shocked.
But isn't that part of characterization when you're choosing what they look like, not only the outfits that they're going to wear, the way they talk, and who their kind of relationships are with, but also what their name actually is, because I think that plays a key part as to our link to that person. I think if you've got a name that's difficult to pronounce, like Hermione, or how did you pronounce it?
Hermione.
Hermione. Hermione, I like that. That's cool.
That's what I thought it was for a year.
Oh, same.
Really?
Same. Well, I thought it was Hermione.
Yeah, thank you.
It's not a criticism. No, I think actually it kind of speaks that whilst it's an unusual name, and Rowling's come out and said she chose an unusual name because she didn't want other girls to be bullied who got called the same name, because she wanted to use a name that's generic, because she didn't want girls to get bullied for being know-it-alls or whatever. So I do
with not bullying some girls. Good for her.
I heard that's what George R. R. Martin did with Khaleesi. I'm just kidding.
Oh, don't get me wrong. That's my only impression in terms of Rowling. But I think that having a name that means something to the character, or means something to the story, or means something to your world that is pronounceable, I think it makes sense. I don't know. What do you think?
That's actually where I was quite lucky in my characters and my setting, because it's a military science fiction adventure. They all have sort of nicknames that relate to what they're doing. So, except the main protagonist is called Shad, just because I thought it turned out to be appropriate, because it apparently means battle in Welsh and happy in Arabic, and he's a cheerful soldier, so it fits. But that was a complete coincidence. But the others, like the one is called Lingo, just because he's a communications expert and speaks 14 languages, and he's also the one who puts on a Biggles kind of accent and mannerisms. And the other one is called Tracker, because he's literally a tracker. So that makes it easy. I had to think about their actual names, their real names, but they don't really feature in the story. So I had to put a bit more thought into that. I'm still not sure what Tracker's real name is, to be honest. But
does it matter?
Because
I mean, in a way, does it matter? To me,
but maybe not to the readers.
Right, you need that headcanon to those bits of information. Yeah,
it's tough. It's tough to me as well, because all of my other characters are from cultures that I'm sort of familiar with, but not in. And Tracker being the Afrikaans one, there's a little bit of stigma that if you are not good at English and you're from the Afrikaans culture, then you're not necessarily seen as educated, which is a terrible bias to have. But that's actually made me struggle with finding a name that sounds authentic and uneducated, because he is. That's not a bad thing. That just happened to be. But without sounding like I, as the author, am giving him a dumb name. I don't know. It's a very difficult.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's a difficult issue for me. Maybe just because I'm aware of it. If I was not myself from that culture, I would probably have picked a name years ago and just stuck with it.
I think it's really interesting.
And let's be honest, to the other end of the spectrum, because sometimes when I need to come up with a name after.
Uh-oh.
We lost Ozzy.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Man,
no.
we are glitchy today. What is going on?
I don't know what's happening today. Oh,
It was
goodness
great
me.
that you're bringing up mispronunciations and like how it's important to have a name that you could pronounce, because mine came from a mispronunciation.
Bookman. His name is Bookman. Like,
No.
Oh.
One of my students telling me about going to the zoo and that she went to see the elephants. And so that's when I was like, oh, Evelyn, the elephant. And then from there, I just sort of like embraced it as something that will be fun for kids to say. And that because it kind of rolls around in the mouth in a fun way. So I don't know. I feel like it was a happy accident.
Yeah, I've kind of stuck with. I really, really, really like the name Freya. I always have, and but I didn't want to have her name as Freya fully. But I also really, really love Norse mythology, and so I thought Freya was quite a good one because she is the goddess of love and war, kind of combined, and very feminine and sexual. And I thought, again, that was quite opposite for my character, but also fitted quite well. So rather than having the full name as Freya, although it's mentioned once in book 1 that she's actually called Freya, she's known as Ray the whole way through, R-E-Y. And I thought that was quite a nice shortening of her name. And then she doesn't really have a surname attached to her. In book 2, her frenemy / mentor person, Kez, she nicknames her Noctura, and it basically means owl in Latin, but because Ray is like a silent killer, and so Ray doesn't wear it as a badge of honor, she wears it as like a negative thing, and it's at some point she becomes Noctua as the stories progress, but
she like embraces it as the story goes.
She does eventually, but she hates it because she doesn't see herself as a killer at all, and she thinks like the woman who labels her as this, basically they're at loggerheads for the whole of book 2, and she thinks that Kez hates her, and it gets to the end of it, and even at the end of it she just doesn't embrace it at all. But book 3, we start seeing that aspect of her coming out, which is what Kez's insight was, and she hates being called it, and she fights against it the whole way through until at some point she goes, actually, do you know what? Yeah, I am. But yeah, we haven't got that yet.
That's coming.
So, that's coming. Yeah, it is.
what I was saying before my internet kicked me out.
You're right.
On the other end of the spectrum, let's some of us be honest too. There have been times when I have a new character and I need to introduce him, and I'm like, all right, this guy's name is Tom Bookman. Tom Bookman is his name. Sometimes you just need a name, and it doesn't really mean a lot. So I've done that sometimes. Sometimes it's very important what you name a character. Other times you have to give them a name. Names are hard.
They are really difficult. Yeah. I've got. Go on. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. No. I was just saying, I put a lot of effort in the names, but I don't give anybody last names unless it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All my names are fantasy names, so none of them are even like close to real.
Right.
Agril, Tefilligin, just ridiculous names. Unadi, Ninyani. I went all around the world, and I would take syllables from different names and put like I put a Korean part of a name with a Norwegian or Scandinavian name, so it flows together very strangely. And I leave it, and I've had lots of people message me and say, "How do you pronounce this name? How do you pronounce this name?"
That's a cool way of doing it. I'll make up some names, but one of my characters is called Raven, and another one is called Callian. And so one of the things that goes on in my story is that because it's humans, but they're not the natives. The natives are Orcarians, and the Orcarians are like pretty green orcs that have lived on that planet for a very, very long time, and humans crash land. And at some point, as it happens with people having relationships outside of their norm, humans and Orcarians ended up having families and stuff, and we have several thousand years later, we have people born once every 50 odd years who then have the ability to communicate through touch and through thought. And that comes through the Orcarian gene. And they are named traditionally after the first creature that they link with. So Callian is named after a fish, and Raven is named after the bird. So that's where I've got that coming from. But yeah, I think names are really important, but they're really hard. What about you, Alyssa? I'm picking on you because you've been really, really quiet and just listening.
Well, so different names in here come from different places. So the main character's name is Seraphina Stewart, because I wanted to pick a last name that sounded pretty like normal-ish, because it's from her human dad who lives in Massachusetts. So it's just like a lot of people know a Stewart, I think, right? Like that's a very common like last name.
I'm from
So
Massachusetts.
that's where that came from.
My family name is Stewart. Yeah, totally, completely. That's so weird.
Cool.
And Seraphina actually comes from her mother's side of the family, and it's spelled Serafina. So, and if you know a bit about.
I cannot spell when you do it like that. Right, I'm going to have to write.
And that's
how do you spell it? Serafina.
Serafina.
Sarah, okay. I genuinely, if someone spells something out, I'm genuinely like completely lost in oblivion with that. I have to like write it down. So I'm like,
okay. And that actually means things like fire, because her mother's family is known for fire magic. So that's kind of where that comes from. A lot of other names are just things that kind of stitched together, though.
I think that's cool.
I put that to hers.
That's cool. I like it when you kind of create your own vibe going on with it. So, would any of you like to do some reading for us today? We'd love to hear you. I love that stunned silence, that little rabbit in headlight. Oh, read it.
I do it, but not first.
Okay, cool. We'd love that.
Yeah.
So my first book is a really kind of a basic story about Evelyn's just learning how to wash her hands. Very basic. So she's going into the bathroom. Evelyn had two choices. The sparkle soap bar that mommy had said has a surprise inside, or the green foamy squirt soap. Evelyn liked both, but Daddy said the more she uses the sparkle soap, the sooner she'd get to the surprise. She reached for the sparkly bar, and when she gave it a squeeze, zoop, it flew right out of her hands, landed on the floor, and skittered away. Whoops, said Evelyn. Everything all right in there, Evie? Called Daddy from the porch. Yes, Daddy, just dropped the soap, replied Evelyn. And that's where I'm stopping.
Oh, very good.
That was really cool. You slipped into that so quickly. I wasn't even aware that you started reading. I'm so sorry.
And I remember those soaps.
Cliffhanger.
I remember those soaps as a kid that had the stuff inside. Oh, totally. The dinosaur egg soap or whatever.
Yeah. And I wanted to focus on like her having choices, because for parents, it's important to them to see like kids have more enthusiasm when they are offered choices. And they're going to be more enthusiastic about going to like wash themselves off after eating something sticky, when they have something that's fun about it for them.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's so refreshing to have books come out which encourage children to do the right thing, but it really is not really for the child, is it? It's training the parent. And so it's more about engaging the parent in the care of the child. And so this is an area that I'm very well versed in. This is where I started my training. And so I'm like, this is it. And so, yeah, so quite often parents disengage, or what they do is they read like baby instruction manuals that are written, the baby handbook, the toddler handbook, how to stop the tantrums and all that kind of nonsense. And it's just like, look, listen to your child, read your child well. You'll never have a temper tantrum. They don't exist. They're not a thing.
Yeah.
Just be aware of what your child's behavior is. Listen to them, take the time, point, use images, take them to where, follow them, all this kind of stuff. And people who aren't aware of the more straightforward ways of doing it, which I think that is much more straightforward than going, no, you're not having that, and then having child, I think it's a great way of being able to do that training without insulting the parent and saying you're doing it wrong, but also without the child having access to that. So that's really cool. I like that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Holly. Yeah, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
And you have someone. Oh, sorry. You have someone doing some art potentially. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Maybe. I've been talking to my friend, but she's been very busy and hasn't gotten back to me about being able to illustrate it. I'm going to talk to her about it on Tuesday when I see her.
Okay.
But I am potentially in the market for an illustrator. So this first book only has 16 pages, including a cover. That would need illustrations for it. So if you know of anyone who's up for that task, I'm trying to get it out to a publisher sometime at the end of the summer, hopefully. Mm-hmm. My nephews are growing up and I want them to be able to enjoy it before they're too old to like get a kick out of my goofy, silly book. So yeah.
Yes, of course. Well, we hope you find an artist. We'll ask around. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Who did? Is my microphone working?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes.
Okay, good. Holly, the person who did
everybody.
art for my book is an amazing artist. If you do need help, I will warn you, he's slow, so it takes him a little while. He's one of those people you just have to kind of accept it when he gets it to you. But if you can't find anyone, I would be glad to introduce you because his work is impeccable.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure.
That's awesome. I'm just going to add into that slightly because this is one of the reasons why we do this, is so that, writing is quite an isolating role. I know that we probably all do other things as well as this, but it's nice to be able to know that there is a community of people that we can work with and tap into who have skills and resources that can guide us, support us, help us, show us, whatever. And I think that for too long, authors have been kind of left in this sea of nothingness. And I think that this is a really important aspect of that. So thank you, Fozzie. I really appreciate you offering that. That's awesome.
That as well. I don't know if anybody else here knows, but I've known Adam. I originally knew him as Scooter back in the day. I've known Adam for about 20 years, probably, I think. We met when we were very young, and we only connected over writing within the last couple of years. Like, we kind of lost touch. We were just Facebook friends, didn't really keep in touch much. But when we reconnected and started chatting, it turns out that we both write, and we've relied on each other so much. I encourage everybody to find that person that you could bounce ideas off of. Sometimes, like midnight, Adam will text me and be like, what do you think of the name Philandrodol? And and I'm like, great, that's awesome, buddy. That's perfect.
Is it more like, okay, that's great, fuck off and let me sleep?
Sometimes. But, we bounce ideas off of each other all the time. We read our work together. We used to have weekly calls when we were really in the depth of it.
Both writing a ton.
Yeah. So I can't encourage everybody enough to find that partner, even if it's somebody here, and connect with them, just so you can share your work. It's great to get that feedback immediately and know what you're doing right and what you're doing that could be changed a little. So I thank Adam so much for that.
He's in demand because he's also one of my go-to people as well. I think it's awesome. I think that's great because it means that, even if you only connect through this, then you've connected with a community that is not toxic, is welcoming of all different things. We're very open-minded to all aspects. And so it's a great community that we're building, and it is building, isn't it? So it takes time to start things off. It takes, success doesn't happen. Well, I suppose we are successful, aren't we?
We are successful, and the connections that we're making are really good. I can't stress enough how invaluable the time that Fozzie and I have spent together working on stuff. It's just been incredible to have somebody to go, oh, what do you think of this idea? And I'm like, no, you didn't explain that properly at all. Get back in there and do it right. I didn't. Yeah, that's all in my head. I didn't actually write that down.
Both Scooter, or I'm sorry, Adam and I have both had times where we'd read something to the other one, and we do that thing where it's almost like a flashback within a flashback and within a flashback, and like we mentioned times, like, and you don't notice it when you're writing because you're just pouring out your heart and you want to get this story out. And then when I read his work, or when he reads my work, we're like, what the hell is happening right now? What time are we in? Who is where? What
Whose
is
memory
happening?
is this?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's actually interesting that it's interesting that you bring up flashbacks, because that's something that I've noticed. Maybe it's just me, but in Afrikaans literature, a couple of decades back, there was a really big book. The English translation is called Circles in a Forest, and a major part of the book is about the main character thinking about his life in the past. In the present time, he's tracking down an elephant. He's trying to save it from a hunter. And elephants will walk in circles in a forest to try and throw prey and come up behind them. I mean, prey, like predators, and come up behind them and avoid them in that way. And so he is aware of this technique, and he's tracking this elephant as it's making circles through the forest. And he's thinking about his life and everything that led him to this moment. So there's a lot of flashbacks, but they're not within flashbacks. They're just flashbacks, and then it goes back to the present. And it's done really, really well. So that's a great example if you ever want to look up that book. The sad thing is, every single Afrikaans book published since then has had flashbacks and flashbacks within flashbacks, because it's cool now. The big book did it. We're all doing it. So I am avoiding flashbacks as much as I can in my books, just because this is a South African author thing that trying to avoid the stereotype. It can obviously be done well, but yeah.
The problem I had. I'm sorry. Who was that? Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Oh, a problem that I had is trying to get that story. I'm writing a new story right now. I've been writing it forever, but it's a simple tale about a brother and a sister who reconnect after years. And I want to get across everything that happened in their lives between the time that they saw each other and then the time they reconnected. But so it's just a lot of flashbacks. And I realized I need to tell most of the story through dialogue and not just like heavy exposition. So as I was reading it, I was boring myself, just like going through like timelines. So I've changed. I had to rewrite so much, but it's better when it's done through dialogue, or just in one word, or in one line or a phrase, and you get the idea of it. They don't need to know all the details. I just need to get it out and let people understand.
I have flashbacks in mind, but mainly because I literally torture my character. She goes through hell. And so she has PTSD flashbacks. So they're very different to just sort of memory flashbacks. But then within the story as well because I didn't want to do too many flashbacks because it's so focused on just her and her experience. I actually did it so she stumbles across a journal and starts reading the journal, and the journal itself is a flashback, but it's a diary entry, obviously, to a previous time, and it's got names in it that she recognizes, and then it starts throwing up her whole world because she sees her father's name in it, and she's just like, whoa, what's going on? And her father's in there written in a way that she would never expect. And that, so
interesting.
It's just different way of doing it.
Well, so what do we think? Fozzie, Renee, or Alyssa? Would you like to go next?
I was going to pick Fozzie because he picked on Chelsea earlier.
Oh. Throw Fozzie under the bus?
Yeah, my punishment. Let me find my work. Here we go.
Is it okay if we pop you? Oh, are you?
Yeah, we can put you up.
That's okay. Are you going to be reading on your phone, Fozzie?
Unfortunately.
No, that's okay.
No, that's fine. I'll put you.
We'll leave everybody on the screen instead of going, because your screen.
I've actually you've got his book cover, so I can actually put that up.
Even better. Look at that. Yay.
So give me a sec. Hang on. Hang on a second. Hang on a second. Sorry.
Here it comes. Here it comes.
1 minute. Sorry. You would never imagine that I'm on my computer for most of the time, would you? Never mind. Is it that one? Hang on, I'm just sifting through because I've got a few here that actually haven't got a name on it, which is slightly annoying.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. No, it's fine. No, it's not your fault. It was my fault because I didn't. It's me not saving it properly. Got it. Okay, cool. I'm just putting it up on the screen. So what I'll do, Fozzie, is I'll put your book cover on the screen so you can just read whatever. If you've got any links as well, I will happily put them up on the screen for you.
I'll send, Jules, I'll send you the link. Don't worry about that, Fozzie. You read, and yeah, remind us the name of your book. Yeah, tell us a little bit about it, what you're going to read, and yeah, go for it. Go for it. Hi.
Portion takes place in chapter 14, so we're jumping ahead quite a bit, but just to give you an idea, the story is, the book is called Always by My Side, and it is a mystery suspense horror novel with a bit of comedy and romance. The general story is that in 1997, a family was slaughtered in their home, the Sinclairs, the mother, the father, and the brother. The only survivor was a young girl named Amy Sinclair. She was later sent to a Catholic school where she resided for 6 months until a similar slaughter took place at the school, and Amy disappeared without a trace. So the story is of two armchair detectives who've decided to investigate this case after being fascinated with it for years. And as they grow closer and closer to figuring out things, they start to realize that the murders may have not happened by human hands. It might be something more supernatural. So that's the general premise. Am I still talking?
Yeah, you're totally good, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just want to make sure. All right. So this takes place, like I said, in chapter 14, and it begins on the night before the main character is set to go meet who he thinks might have been the perpetrator of this crime in Colorado. So I will begin reading now. Later that evening, after I calmed myself with some prescription and non-prescription medications, I eventually retired to bed in an attempt to sleep. I wanted to be well rested for the following day of traveling and meeting new people. Despite my medicated state, I was still overwhelmed with anxiety. Anxiety about the possibility of confronting Philip Wright. Anxiety about possibly seeing Amy alive. Anxiety about the possibility that neither of those things may happen. Also, anxiety about meeting Rudy in person. Anxiety about him not liking the person he sees. Anxiety about not liking the person I see. Anxiety about neither of those things happening. Also, anxiety about flying in a giant metal tube kept aloft by science that I will never understand. And now a newfound anxiety about monsters. I tried to push all of the thoughts out of my mind unsuccessfully until I finally fell asleep. While I slept, I dreamed of monsters. As can only happen in dreams, I was in a large building that I knew was St. Albans, even though it looked nothing like the building I had visited. The floor plan was all wrong and the finishings were all different, but I knew I was in the Catholic home as I was running down the hallway. I could hear them chasing after me with their claws click-clacking against the marble floor. While I didn't see the creatures that were chasing me, I knew their teeth were bared and they were hungry for flesh. I saw a small closet, rushed into it for safety, and stepped inside. I closed the door and cowered in the small area. The tapping of large barbed claws against the stone floors outside made me quake with terror. I could not see them, but I knew they were demons and they were searching for me. The creatures sniffed the surrounding area intently, seeking any evidence of my whereabouts. Through the slatted door, I saw the creature's shadows as they moved slowly but deliberately, closer and closer. I was holding my breath and trying not to move as I shook, tears burning my cheeks. I knew everyone else was dead, and I was intended as their final victim. I could not tell how many there were in total, but the shadows grew fuller as they swirled and sniffed their way toward me. The light cascading in between the slats started to dim as the creatures gathered outside of my hiding spot. I could hear them all huffing and breathing in unison as the room went completely dark. I held my breath and began to pray silently. I had never prayed to a higher power, yet I knew at that moment that if demons existed, the antithesis had to exist as well. I prayed for help. I prayed to be delivered from evil. I prayed for salvation. Suddenly, I was blinded by a white light. Before me was a beautiful angel, unlike any depiction of an angel I had ever seen. It was amorphous with several eyes, mouths, and limbs, and I knew it was a divine creature. It was the embodiment of salvation. The creatures approached me, and I waited to be accepted. The creature approached me, and I waited to be accepted into its embrace. Feeling the warmth emanating from the shape, I stepped forward. Claws slashing at my throat, chest, arms, and legs. Flesh ripped and my blood flowed. Razor-sharp teeth began to devour me. Greedy tongues slipped around in between my bones, devouring every wet, juicy droplet of my existence. The creature worked quietly, stripping my bones of any trace of flesh. Once every piece of me was gone, only bones remained, which quickly turned to dust and fell into a small mound of fine powder. A strong wind whipped up out of nowhere and blew those remaining traces of me away, scattering the final pieces of my existence so far into the distance that nary a speck remained. There was only silence. I felt time pass, great swaths of time. Millennia faded until a loud bell began to ring out into the nothingness. More bells rang, uniting in a cacophony symbolizing the true end of all life in the universe, even the creatures which had outlived every other being on Earth. I slowly opened my eyes as the sound transformed and became the familiar ringtone of my cell phone. The screen on my phone was illuminated, lighting the room. When I picked up the telephone, I saw it was 3:15 a.m., and the display showed Rudy's photo with an alert for an incoming FaceTime call. As suggested by my phone, I slid to open. And should I keep going, or is that enough time?
You are very welcome to keep going. It's entirely up to you, Fozzie, whatever you feel most comfortable doing, but you have time, so feel free.
There's one other portion that picks up after this. I sat up and rubbed my eye. The FaceTime call with Rudy Botham. Hey, what's up? I know Rudy says, I know it's late or early or whatever, but you just have to see this right now. Click that link I just sent you. I sat up and rubbed my eyes before I opened the message and clicked the link that Rudy had texted me immediately prior to his call. I watched the screen as a video began. There's an excerpt. Police are seeking help in the capture of a murderer who targeted a local business in broad daylight. Talia Sherman is on the scene with more information. Below is a dramatic recreation of the events that transpired at 600 West Glen Avenue in Boulder, Colorado. This interpretation is compiled from several verifiable news reports and articles about this incident. Veronica Saltzman arrived at her work assignment at approximately 2 p.m. on Thursday, December 4th. She needed temporary assignments such as this to allow her to drop her kids off at school every morning and tend to her housework and errands without the children in tow. Her husband left for work each day at 6 a.m. and was available to pick them up at 3 p.m., which gave Veronica the opportunity to take jobs that started after her morning errands. Luckily, she did not need to work full-time, but the money from an occasional assignment that matched her skill set and time constraints came in handy, especially with Christmas rapidly approaching. She had been told that she would simply be covering the phones during the office's second shift as business was increasing close to the holiday. Veronica had been assured that she would simply have to transfer an incoming call to an available agent, and she could even read while she waited for the phone to ring. It was a simple assignment and would give her extra spending money for the kids' Christmas. It was a win-win. The company for which she was working that day, Genesis Tech, was located on the 8th floor of the business complex. However, Veronica had mistakenly written down the 9th floor when she received the call from the temporary agent. No one was required to present an ID or be announced by security, since so many offices in the building had people coming and going throughout the day. Had she been required to check in with security guards, she might have been told that she had the wrong floor number for the business she was visiting. As it was, she strode in the building, smiling at the guard as she passed, and entered the elevator. She pushed the button for the 9th floor and rode up as she scrolled through her Instagram timeline, occasionally liking friends' posts. Veronica exited the elevator on the 9th floor and entered the lobby of Jester Media, taking out her AirPods as she rounded the corner. When she stepped in front of the reception desk where she thought she would be working, her smile quickly faded as she saw the receptionist, Deborah Tramer, dead at her desk. Her throat was still oozing warm blood and her eyes were hanging open, staring at Veronica as she came to a standstill. Veronica froze in terror, unable to move, wanting to look away from the dead woman, but unable to close her eyes. Slowly, she turned her head and saw signs she should have noticed from walking in. Directly ahead of her, a pair of legs lay limp on the floor, the rest of the man's body obscured by a cubicle wall. To her left, a swath of blood arced across the a framed poster proudly announcing the firm's 2015 Better Business Bureau Award. On the floor behind the lobby chairs lay a woman's lifeless body. Both her hands and her left foot were missing, and what remained of her was ravaged with bloody, deep wounds. Veronica came to her senses and backed toward the elevator away from the carnage. She continuously scanned the area for any signs of life or threat. When she felt her back press against the wall, she frantically pushed the button in behind her. There was no movement in any space that she could see, but every second that she waited for the elevator to arrive, her heart rate increased. Finally, the bell pealed and the door behind her slid open. The terrified young woman rushed into the elevator and took her eyes away from the office for only a second to locate the button for the lobby. She furiously pressed it and began to cry when the door remained open. She allowed her eyes to move away from the office space once again, just long enough to look at the button to close the door. Under normal circumstances, she would get confused as to which button opened and which closed the doors. Now the symbols had lost all meaning. She pushed both, hoping it would give the required outcome of the door sliding shut. It did not, and the door remained open. The woman began to sob, fearing whoever had enacted the bloody mess in the office would come barreling toward the elevator with weapon in hand. The door slowly began to slide closed, and with each inch she felt exponentially safer. Finally, the door shut and the elevator began to descend, at which point she started to cry uncontrollably. She was headed toward safety, toward salvation. And that's the end.
Ooh, that was so good. Let's get all of us back on screen. There we go. Hi, everybody. We're back. Oh, let's unmute us. Hold on. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Oh, Jules, you're still muted.
I must say, it was ominous. It was ominous with her going towards salvation, given that in the dream the salvation was not salvation. Very ominous. She's dead.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's very well written.
As far as being critical about our own work, we're all critical about our own work, and this is my first published work, and I see issues like of a first-time writer. I mean, it's fine though. I appreciate it, and I still wanted to get it out. You can only work so far. Sometimes you just have to say this is done, and you have to put it out and accept it with all of its flaws and its great things. And so I don't think it's a fantastic work, but I really appreciate the story and the work that I put into it.
No, I think it's amazing. I do disagree with you in the sense that once it's out, you have to kind of step away from it, because I don't know how to do that. So I'm glad that you can. I kind of look back at mine and I'm like, oh god, I mean, I could have worded that better, or that's not what I wanted, and so but I think you're right. Well, yeah,
I was looking through today looking for this excerpt, and I found so many hads. The dreaded had, the past perfect. That's what.
This is why I write in the present tense.
Yeah, Adam and I had to excise so many. Every time I would read, I'd catch 50 of them, and there's still some in there. So you just have to accept your work, good or bad. But I'm very happy with what I put out, and I hope people enjoy it.
I think what you read was really good. It was a really good showcase of your level of skill, and it was really interesting. I love the character development that you had, even in that short piece. You really kind of set the scene. The characters were really kind of engaging, and there was moments where you were kind of there with the character and experiencing it. So yeah, it was really good.
The body parts. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So I think we are critics of our own work, but I think that's okay. But I think sometimes it's nice having other people kind of give us feedback.
I think that writing is such a skill that we have, and it takes practice. That our first books are going to be at the level that we are at that point, and our fifth book is going to be different. That's just inevitable, So, and the first time you're doing it, you're so, like Jules said, isolated and trying to figure it out by yourself. By that future time, there's probably a good chance you're going to have other people around you who are encouraging you in different ways, or letting you bounce ideas off them. There's so much growth that happens, I feel like, as writers from one book to the next.
Yeah.
Very cinematically as well, as far as film. And like one sign of a horrible film is about a writer in LA. When people are like, "Hey, my life is interesting. Why don't I write about myself?" And I realized I did that in a different way. Like, the main character is 100% me in this book. Like, I didn't even give him any. It's just me, absolutely. So I think that's an error of a first-time writer, but it kind of worked. I don't want to do that necessarily moving forward, but I think it helps a lot when you first start to write. Like, instead of having to try to think in somebody else's mindset when you're first starting out, you just put yourself into the book, and like, how would I react? What would I do? And then as you go on, you understand character development better, and you can kind of write in somebody else's voice.
Standard voice.
I think it's a great process. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it is quite difficult to separate yourself and recreate. I mean, like we make mistakes in our life. We get things wrong. And, I think all of us at some point we go, I wish I was more like that person. I wish I had that kind of characteristic that made me more charismatic or more funny or whatever. And so we spend our lives trying to accommodate our personalities so that they become what we would really like to be. And some of us end up not liking our personalities at all. So, you know, so I think then to create something completely brand new is really difficult, because you've got to completely forget your own personality and then create this new character that doesn't exist anywhere in the world. And that's really tough. That's a really tough ask, but it is achievable. It is something that you can do. And I think had you not said that it was you, I don't think any of us would have known that. Maybe Adam, but.
Awesome. No, really great. Really great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Renee,
Absolutely.
or Melissa, or does anybody have anything else you'd like to say about Fozzie's read, or then Renee or Alyssa, would you like to jump in and read next?
I mean, I'm good to go if you want to take a little bit more time. Okay, cool.
Yeah, let's.
So I'm just.
Do you mind if we pop you up onto the screen and in the same way we did before? Is that okay? Have you?
Yeah.
All right. So introduce yourself. Introduce the name of your book, where we can get it, and maybe tell us a little bit about what you're going to read, and then read until you're done, until you're satisfied, basically.
So, yeah, this is just. I struggled with trying to figure out which section I wanted to, because there's a few good ones in here. Well, hopefully the whole thing's good, but there's a few specific sections I like. So I'm just gonna read the first opening pages. So luckily there's nothing really to catch up on. But this is just the first couple of pages of my book, The Towers of Nine, and you can find it on and you can find it on Amazon. I'm gonna post. There's the link. So yeah, and like I said before, it's a YA fantasy story, and I'm just gonna jump into it. So and also context for reasons, I ended up calling all of my chapters episodes, so that's fun. So episode 1, entrance exam. Permission to splash water on Mother Dearest. I will not be late today. Only as a last resort, my father responded calmly and without looking up from the omelet he was making. Though you may want to hurry, whatever you do. I glanced up at the time displayed on the microwave, the green numbers taunting me with how little time I had left until the most important moment of my life. Okay. My parents' bedroom was at the end of a small, hallway-like section of the house. It was more like an alcove that ended in a door that Mother had painted sunflower yellow. I knocked on the door loudly 3 times. Mom, I called. Today's the day for the entrance exams. Silence. Fine then. I was going in. I opened the door to find my mother still under the blankets and for all purposes lost to the land of the living. She snored loudly, her black hair a matted mess that hid most of her head. I sighed. Mom, I called again. No movement. I stood next to her and shook her shoulder twice. Nothing. All right then. Their sink was just a few feet away in their master bedroom. Mom spluttered awake as soon as the cold water touched her skin. I'm up. I'm up. She rubbed her face and blinked a few times. She looked at me. My hands were wet and I was already dressed for the day, and she frowned. The entrance exams. Dad is making breakfast. I suggest you hurry. I told her, then turned around and left. There was a flurry of noise from the room as I closed the door behind me and sighed. How much time do we have? I sat down on the counter and checked the time on the microwave. Eat something. She's going to be at least 20 minutes. Dad set a plate with a ham and spinach omelet in front of me. Thank you. I know how much today means to you. I want to see you succeed. He offered me a small smile. Well, it was a grin for him. His eyes were a proud light green. I gave him a near identical expression. According to Mom, it's a 5-stage test and I'm getting graded in 9 categories. I just have to score an average of 75 across them all. 675 total or higher, he confirmed. Out of a possible 900. I should be fine, unless spellcraft requires casting. And there it was. The 4 words that would decide my fate and the trajectory of my future. If today didn't go well, if my entrance hinged on being able to cast a spell, I was doomed. I'd have no choice but to re-enter the human school system and live my life as if my mother's side of the family didn't exist. The thought terrified me. Whatever happens today and every day after, I'm proud of you, Serafina. But do you think I can do it? My father gave a thoughtful hum. I believe that if your mother is correct on how they intend on testing you, then you will do just fine. I let out a sigh of relief. I trusted my father's honesty. It was a trait I'd often be called too brutal for, but it was reassuring. If he thought I couldn't do it, he would tell me. It was why he brought up spellcraft. It was the greatest hurdle and largest obstacle between me and what I wanted. Of course she will, my mother, her eyes a sparkling golden yellow and her hair still slightly damp from her rust shower, walked into the room and threw her arms around my father. Accustomed to it, he just let her hang off of him like they were still in their 20s, rather than well into their 40s. I was unamused. We spent the past year getting ready for this. And so have the other kids. You won't be behind them. I made sure of that. Those old-timers haven't changed the way the entrance exam is held in over 1,000 years. I know my baby can do this. I'm 15, I reminded her dryly. Dad didn't even have the decency to look sympathetic. He just looked charmed by it. I'm so glad I will never be like that. Oh, Hecate, we need to go. Mother gasped, pecked Dad in the cheek, and grabbed my hand with enough force to pull me out of the chair. Lucky me, I was already done eating. Love you both, my father called after us as Mom cast a transport spell with wide circular hand motions. I waved once before the spell was finished. It was a little disorientating, being one place and then in seconds being somewhere entirely different. The architecture around me was stonework, old Gothic style with dark gray gargoyle statues and stained glass. Still looks the same as when I took the entrance exam, Mom said quietly. I'm not sure I was meant to hear that. Come on, stay with me and follow the crowd. We were surrounded by dozens of people, all heading in the same direction. Mom barely looked at me as she grabbed my wrist, making sure I didn't get lost like some child. But her eyes kept darting around. Was she looking for something? Or an old acquaintance? Former co-workers and classmates, maybe? She looked nervous. I can do this, Mom, I told her over the dull rumble of the crowd. I know, I just would rather not be recognized until you at least get inside the exam chamber. I'd rather not cause a scene. I frowned. I knew my mother's decision to marry Dad had been problematic for her. There was a reason I'd never met my grandmother, or anyone else on that side of the family. Don't fret, your mother's just being paranoid. Today is a big day for you, and you just need to focus on doing your best. Whatever happens in there, I want you to know that I am and will always be proud of you. Thank you for your vote of confidence, Mom. She gave me a flat, narrowed-eyed look. I gave her a grin. She rolled her eyes, and then we stepped into the room. It was filled with lines of parents and their children, all filling out forms. The kids were all the same age as me. I noticed Mom glance around nervously, but then settle down. Was she looking for someone? Mom led the way. In moments, she was hastily scribbling down her information on parchment with a quill pen. I can't believe I'm actually doing this. You know, I was once part of the committee that ran these things. It's so strange being on this side of everything. She mumbled to herself, not looking at me. When she was done, she rolled up the parchment and tossed it in the air, then snapped her fingers twice, and it was gone. Now what? She looked at a large wooden pair of doors. Through there and just follow their instructions. Her voice wobbled a little. I sighed as the tears in her eyes got bigger. Mom, it's okay. I know, she sounded seconds from crying. Taking pity on my poor mother, I gave her what was meant to be a quick hug. She was having none of it. I'm not going anywhere yet. Don't care. Gave a weak attempt to shove her away. Mom, I whined, I have to go. She had mercy on me eventually. Left quickly before she changed her mind. I could hear her mumbling about me still being a baby and rolled my eyes. And I'm going to call it there.
That was great.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Oh,
Very immersive. I don't know why, but I got the feeling of like, you know, those slice of life short stories you had to read in like middle school, high school, like Yellow Raft and Blue Water or things like that. It felt like a childhood. Like it was really a look into like this family that you recognize and you know, and how kids interact with their parents. I loved it.
And to have the mom like feeling those like, oh God, I'm hating being back at this place, that something happened. Maybe she was bullied. Maybe she got in trouble for something with, I don't know what it is, but there's something there.
Like, there's a history here. And she's like, oh boy. and her baby's about to go to a boarding school, and she's not going to see her for months at a time. So she's just like, ah.
I had friends that went to boarding schools, and yeah, it was weird. Yeah.
Because Serafina's only child, she doesn't have siblings, so that's like extra layer of just like, ah.
Her baby's going away. That's wild. Yep. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's excellent. Does she? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jules. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I've got your front cover that I can share on the screen. Hang on.
Yes.
Hang on.
Lovely.
There we go.
I was going to ask, does Serafina ever learn how to cast spells, or is that something that's always something she can't do?
It's an ongoing process. I can't go more in details without risking some spoilers, but it's a complicated problem.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
We love spoilers. We love spoilers on this show.
We do love spoilers. That's very true.
We try to tease them out as much as possible.
I will say this: there is an outside force that's preventing her from being able to cast spells that she has to deal with.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I like
it's
that.
not that her mother didn't try to teach her; it's just something is physically preventing her from casting spells.
Interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Can I ask maybe a challenging question?
Try it. Go for it.
How do you? I mean, you can't help but equate this to like Harry Potter. The Harry Potter world is very similar, and it's in our in our pop culture. How do you differentiate your work from something so popular about the same subject?
Well, one, I tried to go for a pretty different kind of tone, and I also make a pretty big point of this is not. Serafina is not some kind of chosen hero. She's just a girl in a crazy situation who is trying to make the best of this. And the results tend to be mixed.
I think it's really old, isn't it? Yeah, the chosen one. We've talked about tropes previously on other shows, and they do crop up every now and again in most of our shows. And I think tropes as a general thing are actually quite useful and helpful in the story writing process, and also it helps the reader anticipate potential future things, and it also can be used to twist around and throw the reader off course. But I think there are some tropes that really need to just go, and I think the chosen one is probably one of them. Because
I think that what you're saying is that's very overdone, and I think that what Fozzie's saying is the sort of magical school, sort of that sort of genre, kind of sort of originated with the Harry Potter books, and it's become its own genre. Like we were talking about before, there's a whole magical school world of books these days that are unrelated to Harry Potter, but are like, what if I went to a fucking school that had magic? How cool would that have been? And everybody wants to write that story now. I get that. I don't have any problem with that. But you're right. I feel like it's inevitable that the same way that if I write a high fantasy, it's probably going to be compared to Tolkien. There's a good chance that a magical school, what do they call it? Contemporary fantasy or fantasy reality or some magical reality, something like that, where it takes place in this world, but there's also this magical element. Yeah. I think that's its own genre that's growing in a way that we couldn't have anticipated before Harry Potter books. You know what I mean?
You had the Worst Witch, which is also based off of a boarding school, and you have a girl who goes there and she's a witch and she has her own adventures and stuff. So I think there are other ones that are similar in that sense. But I think it's okay to have your work compared to somebody else's, because quite often publishers require you to do that, which is, if you're submitting your work, what is your work most like? And it's, as an author, it's like, I feel really conceited saying, well, mine could be like at the same level as so-and-so. But I think it's okay to have that link in terms of, well, this book does something similar. It has magic themes and it's a boarding school, but that's where the similarities end.
Right, and then you move on and tell this totally different story. Yep, of course. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's like in film, the superhero movies where everybody's kind of sick of superhero movies or zombie movies or et cetera, et cetera. You're maybe not necessarily sick of that. You're sick of the same thing. If somebody does something unique and interesting with that baseline premise, that's why like some of the Marvel films have been so revolutionary, like taking on what was it? Winter Soldier was like an old-fashioned spy thriller. They like put that twist on it, and then other ones like Black Panther was something we hadn't seen before. So it's not really the genre that is cliche; it's like what is being done with it. So if you can do something new and interesting, you can do that. And I feel like you are, Alyssa.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I fully endorse what Fozzy's just said. I agree with him. I think that is. I think when you read a book that someone else has written and you're like, oh, that's amazing, I love that idea, but I'm going to do my own thing. And I think it's when you put your own twist on it, your own aspect, and your own thoughts, and your own characters, and everything else. I think that's what creates your story yours. And I think that that's a really awesome comparison. The fact that was the first thing that you thought of. So, that was really good. Well done, Alyssa.
Yeah.
I like the front. Cool. I like. Is that protagonist on the front? Let me put it up again.
Yeah, that's supposed to be Serafina. Yeah.
I really like the
Can
character
you tell us a little
design.
bit about the art before we move on?
So this was drawn by a friend of mine because I really like how she draws people and characters. I mean, just look at it.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
So
it's a dragon in the background, actually, which I didn't notice the first time that I looked at it.
Absolutely.
So
Dragon.
behind her is supposed to be like an image of the school. And that dragon statue is actually really important. We just didn't get to there because that's a later thing.
Totally. Yep.
Love it.
That's really cool.
Because the name of the book is the name of the school she's going to go to. So there's a bunch of towers, and each of them has like their own little like theme. Like each of the towers is named after a fantasy creature. So there's a dragon tower, and the dragon tower is really important.
Gotcha.
Right.
That's cool. Yep.
And that's not that having houses is not a new thing. That's been around for a long time. So we were talking at the very beginning when you dropped out about Mallory Towers, which is a book that Enid Blyton wrote in the 1930s. And she basically, so the premise is a girl goes to a boarding school and it's her adventures in this boarding school. So that as a theme has been around for a long time. And they're all sorted into houses. And now we have like classrooms with names and colors and shapes and animals and trees and God knows what else. And sorry, I've just been distracted by the absolutely most beautiful moonrise I've actually ever seen. Oh
I
my
didn't know
God.
what you were going to say.
Sorry, it's literally. Oh my God! It's orange.
Ooh, fancy.
It's really cool.
Like you.
Orange.
Like Fozzie.
It's the moonrise. You can see it right here. There it is. That's so good.
I like it. Sorry, it literally just caught my attention. I was just like, what is that glowing thing in the sky? And I was like, oh my God, it's the moon. Wow, it's beautiful. I'll try and snap a pic in a minute. But then something simple like that can become part of your story, can't it? Or become part of a character. Maybe something that character's wearing, for example. Cool.
Well,
all right.
Renee, would you like to read some for us now? We would love that.
Your turn.
And are you okay with us popping up full screen? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great. And I think we've got your cover art. So
I think I've got two. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll put them up on the screen in a minute.
Well, you can put the sort of orangey one with the jungle and stuff, because that's probably the most relevant to the part that I'm going to read.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And once again, introduce yourself one more time, your work one more time, and is it available yet? I can't remember.
No, sadly.
Not yet. Okay,
I'm trying to finish a PhD in STEM, so.
Oh wow! Wow. Okay.
I'll get there.
Yeah, oh my gosh! Wow.
What's your specialism?
Statistics.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm impressed. All right, here you go.
So I need to write fiction to just let off steam and think in a very different way. It helps a lot. Okay, so I'm Renee. I haven't quite decided on the pronunciation yet. It's a pseudonym. It's similar to my real name. I'm not in witness protection or anything, but in my normal job, I publish things, and they're like academic papers, and I don't want people getting confused between that and my fiction. So I'm Renee when it comes to fiction. I'm a South African author, and I mainly write sci-fi, military adventure. My upcoming book that will hopefully be published towards the end of next year doesn't have a title yet. It's just sort of the adventures of Signal Squad, I guess. And it's about this squad of commandos in a futuristic Anglo-Indian galactic empire. But the empire is not bad. They've got a parliamentary system going on. So the background to the part that I'm going to read, this is fairly close to the beginning of the story. I've got the three characters, Tracker, Shad, and Lingo, who are in the squad together. And it's their first mission without their late captain, who died in their previous assignment. They are now on a jungle planet, and they are being sent to capture a mercenary called Falques, who is actually based on a real person from history. In Africa, he was a French mercenary who led some pretty big, was involved in some pretty big conflicts. But now he's a fictional character. That's just where the inspiration is drawn from. So in what I'm going to read, Tracker, Shad, and Lingo need to meet up with a team of mercenaries called Onyx Squad, who know the jungle, know the planet, and they're supposed to help them capture this other mercenary who is no longer in the good graces of the galactic government. But there's a lot of tension happening because it's their first time doing a mission by themselves without their former leader, and Tracker is sort of in charge. So here we go. 3:45. Tracker, Shad, and Lingo are assembled outside the barracks in various stages of readiness. Shad, who hasn't slept well, is glad to be up, tired though he is. Lingo, who would still have been lost in sweet dreams if Shad hadn't dragged him out of bed, is slowly brushing his teeth even as Tracker gives the order to set off. Rendezvous coordinates unchanged? He asks Lingo as they pass through the camp gates, absently receiving salutes from the sentries. No new communications from Onyx Squad, confirms Lingo with a yawn, shoving his toothbrush into his pocket. Why they couldn't wait for us here is beyond me. The base couldn't jolly well have thrown him out. They haven't the authority. Onyx Squad wanted to make us walk, mutters Tracker, adjusting his infrared headlamp. Wanted to show us who's in charge. More likely they didn't want to hang around where they weren't wanted, says Shad. They're used to the jungle, they'll be at home in it. Stop to resupply and move on. It's what I'd have done if I were in their position. You don't know anything about their position, snaps Tracker. You don't know anything about them at all. Oh, and you do. After weeks of inexplicable tension, Shad's had just about enough. What's your issue with these mercenaries anyway? You've decided from the start that you dislike and distrust them. That's a terrible mindset to have before you've even met someone. Met men like them, says Tracker. I know what they're like. In Track's defense, I heard a juicy rumor about them, says Lingo. Sorry, I just lost my place. In Track's defense, I heard a juicy rumor about them. Ow! Lingo slaps his neck. Bloody mosquito, doesn't repellent mean anything to you? Did you drink your quinine this morning? Asks Shad sharply. Yeah, I did. I won't be popping off quite yet. Damn, that stings. Where was I? Right, Onyx Squad's dark past. Lingo gives a melodramatic shudder. In the eerie silence of the jungle, it works a little too well. It said they killed a man. Isn't that the point? Says Shad, after a brief silence. You know, mercenaries and that. I meant one of their own, says Lingo. Use some imagination, Shad. Wings told me he flew them down once, several years ago, when they were still in the commandos. Planet called Mavinga. He didn't retrieve them, but he says the guy who did said only 3 of them came back. Natural enough, right? Hazards of the job? Only there was a weird atmosphere in the shuttle, like something had gone very, very wrong. An accident? Asks Shad. That's what they said. He believed them at the time, and maybe he still does, but after that a rumor started circulating among the mess halls and canteens. All very hush-hush, all very speculative, as befits the nature of us commandos. But the idea was floated that they'd got rid of him themselves, and the idea never sank. By the time anyone had the guts to ask them, they'd vanished. And by the time they returned as grizzled mercenaries from some unmentionable conflicts in the independent systems, with a new 4th man, no one cared anymore. If it's true, it's awful, frowns Shad. Imagine being killed by your squad mates, the people you're supposed to trust above everyone. That's the highest form of treason. Why on earth would they have done that? Doubt it's true, says Tracker. Just drunk gossip. Hang on, why are you defending them? Asks Lingo. I thought you hated all mercenaries. My opinion isn't based on hearsay. Tracker's tone is as heavy as the fog and ends the conversation. Checking the phosphorus dials of his compass, he adjusts his course, passing through a gap between two looming trees, leading the way ever deeper into the jungle. At 4:30 a.m. they reach the rendezvous point, covertly in total silence. Tracker's been possessed by some demon of paranoia. For the past half hour they've been on high alert, passing through the jungle like wraiths. No communication save hand signals, infrared lights off, night vision on low power to conserve batteries. And not a sound allowed, easier said than done, in the mud that sucks at their boots and the gravity that sucks at their legs and packs, making light-footed movement particularly difficult. Tracker even made them cover their spoor, hardly necessary in the god's-forsaken jungle, in a sector with no confirmed or even rumoured enemy presence. But Chad and Lingo offered no objection. The tension that's been building in Tracker's breast these few weeks has just about reached boiling point. By unspoken agreement, they're content to let it pass them by and scold the mercenaries instead. Where the devil are they? Tracker hasn't broken his no-speaking rule. His hand signal simply meant where with a question mark. The rest is perfectly communicated regardless. There's no sign of anyone else, and it's nearly 2 minutes overtime. Maybe the mission is a bust after all. Not that he allows himself to entertain any hope to that effect. A moment later, his trained ear picks out a rustling sound, quite unlike the buzz of insects or the chirp of frogs, or the drip of moisture through 1,000 tiers of leaves. It's worth strengthening his night vision for this meeting, to see their faces, to gauge their intent. He signals the other two to do the same, and thus, by grainy green light, they get their first look at the men of Onyx Squad. Onyx Squad, Code Echo 3 confirm. The one in front must be former Sergeant Berak, better known as Straightlace. His voice has a raspy quality, like he's fond of a smoke or shouting. The tension in his brick-like jaw suggests the latter. Signal Squad, Code Delta 7 confirmed, answers Tracker, stepping out from among the foliage. The rendezvous point is a small clearing formed by a net of tree roots so dense no growth can penetrate it from the mud below. Both squads emerge into the clearing, regarding each other warily. So, you're the sat-navs, are you? Straightlace's eyebrows are hidden by his goggles, but it's obvious he's raised them. Best of the best, apparently. Tracker stiffens, jaw clenched, working out how much disrespect he can get away with in his reply, no doubt. Lingo steps hurriedly to the front. As we live and breathe, sir, he says cheerfully, raising 2 fingers in a quick salute. Velko here, sat-nav extraordinaire. I'm the one you'll be escorting, protecting, generally preserving from the world. The other 2 aren't sat-navs at all. Morris is recon, born and bred, and he's in charge of our team. Korhal's the one with the band-aids. A medic in this jungle is worth his weight in gold, says Straightlace, acknowledging Shad with a nod. Then he turns to Tracker, and at once his demeanour changes. Chest expanding, chin jutting out, the line of a frown appearing on his forehead. Well, Morris, you may be the leader of your squad, but I'm in charge of this mission, he rasps. And it's a bloody sensitive one, so we damn well better work together perfectly. Falquist isn't ready for us, but you can bet your lives he'll get ready damn fast if he catches any suspicion. So clear your decisions with me. All of them. Understood, sir, Tracker grinds out. Just because Straightlace used to be a sergeant doesn't entitle him to an ounce of his respect. But he knows the type. Talk to him like an equal, he'll only take offence. His accent revealed him to be an old-world blighty at once. Tracker clamps down the seething resentment and falls silently into step behind Onyx Squad, letting them lead the march. Try standing up for yourself, you'll just get trod down again. Shut up and do as you're told. Leave the thinking and feeling and hoping and dreaming to the lauded old-worlders, founders and bastions of the great solar diplomacy. It's their galaxy. End scene.
Ren, can you just keep reading forever? I just love your voice.
Yeah.
And that would be totally fine. I wouldn't mind one little tiny bit. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. That was beautifully written and read well, and oh yeah, really, really fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Can I show the other? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Fozzie.
No, go ahead, Jules, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, can I show the other images that you
sure.
had? Because it's really interesting what you've got. So this is the other set of images that we've got. Would you tell us a little bit about this?
Sure. So these are stock images that I found on Unsplash. And so these are sort of like character banners. And so from left to right, it's Shad and Lingo and Tracker. So Shad has got this, he's all about helping people. His backstory is actually that he wanted to be a nurse. That was his dream. But he's from very poor circumstances on a colonized planet that sort of got the very short end of the stick. And so he didn't have a lot of opportunities. His only way off the planet was joining the army. So he did, and through a series of coincidences and circumstance, ended up as a commando, which is probably the worst job for someone who wants to save lives, because it's, a job about taking lives. And that's one of his central conflicts. He's sort of the main protagonist of the three, especially in book one. He's the youngest. He's about 21. So he's still trying to figure things out, and he's just confused. But his main point is trying to help everyone, which is obviously not possible. So that creates a lot of conflict for him. And he's sort of Maori coded very broadly. I'm not that familiar with the culture that I want to incorporate a lot of it, but I've got some ideas. What I do know of the culture, I've incorporated. But he did grow up very sort of dissociated from culture in general because of this planet. It's the typical situation of this big, the Galactic Empire, rolling in saying, "Oh, I like your resources, planet. Have our bulldozers take over everything." And he's grown up in this colonial city without a lot of culture or character, and he's trying to find some sort of place to call home. And then the second banner is Lingo, the what ho chaps guy. He's all about having fun, getting the best experiences that he can. He's really, really smart. He speaks 14 languages. He could have got any kind of scholarship that he wanted, but he decided to join the commandos for the adventure. He could even have just been, analyzing the satellite data and stuff, but he wants to be on the ground. He wants the adrenaline. He wants the attention of hot ladies and guys wherever he goes. So that's his life.
Yay.
But he's also kind of a mentor to Shad. He sort of takes him under his wing. And then there's Tracker, the last one, who's from a war-torn country. I've taken inspiration from a lot of African history, especially in the sort of post-colonial era, where there was a lot of, people who had been deposited in these colonized countries by the colonizers, situations like Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, and places like that, Kenya as well, where they were people who were in name settlers or colonizers, which they didn't really belong there, but they weren't the government. They weren't the oppressors themselves. And when colonialism pulled out, they were left completely defenseless, unsupported, and there were a lot of massacres, also because of civil war and stuff like that. So it's a sad reality that most people in South Africa know someone like that, who's come from some war-torn background, some kind of, they've seen horrible things, and he's based on that. So he's also kind of supposed to be in charge of the squad, but he's not very comfortable with it. He would love to just run and hide from all war and violence forever, but he can't. So this causes a lot of interesting dynamics. That's the three of them.
Very poignant.
As they try to navigate the world.
Intense emotions. Yeah.
I really like the words that you've got that surround it. Like, you care too much, wrong, I don't care enough. And you only get one shot at life. I'm sure as hell not wasting mine. And you haven't seen war like I have, but I hope you never do. I like it. It's very powerful. very powerful. Yeah, I wanted you to talk about that a little bit because I thought I saw it and it was just so what's the word? It really draws you in.
Audio has gone.
Uh-oh.
Sorry,
Everybody okay?
we can see you.
See you fine.
Oh, is it just me?
Everything seems
Yes.
fine. Yeah. Every once in a while there's a glitch. So yeah.
No, there we go.
We're creeping up towards the end of the show anyway, so we're doing great.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you know it kind of fits so nicely with the topic that we're talking about today, which is characters and character development and how we're kind of working with that. And this is a topic that we'll keep going back to because it's just such a big topic. You cannot possibly cover everything in one video. So, Adam, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I think that's great. But this has been a really fun show. I'm sorry we had a little technical issues for folks here and there through the show, but it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it has been a lot of fun. So there's a couple of things before we go and before we sign off. The first thing is just to remind everyone that the date of the closing date of the competition is coming very close, isn't it? It's nearly ending. So if you want to join our competition and do a short story and send it in, with the potential to the winner will get their 1,000-word story in a book that's published, and you have 3 things you have to write, don't you, Adam? Do you want to tell everyone? I'll get the picture up.
Yeah. So our first ever short story competition is coming to an end. We're almost at the closing date. We want everybody to submit something 1,000 words or less with 3 elements so that when the winners are published, all the stories sort of have this theme going together with them. We want everything to have a wolf, a magnifying glass, and the outer rings of Saturn. Those 3 things: wolf, magnifying glass, outer rings of Saturn. And I like to so you can see all 3 of them here. There's a magnifying glass over the letter A in awards, Saturn in the background, the wolf, obviously. We want those 3 things. But we want you to be creative. It doesn't have to be a wolf. It doesn't have to be Saturn. It doesn't have to be a magnifying glass. However, they can be. Do it your way. It can be 3 drinks on a cocktail menu. It can be reference points in a sci-fi adventure. It can be anything. But we are getting close to the end of our first competition, and we would love for you to be part of that. So yeah, I think that's
yes. And you've missed out something very important.
Oh, what did I want?
Yes. What are we doing with some of our money?
Oh, we're donating. Yes, thank you. Yes, 15% of the proceeds of the sales of the final book are going to be donated to the Trevor Project, which is a nonprofit that focuses on LGBTQ youth suicide prevention, because that's a major problem, especially in this country. So we've already donated to them in the past, and we are going to keep supporting them. So please sign up, please submit, and we will be releasing a book with the winners next year.
Yeah.
So that's the plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is only a $10 entry fee. So and that is not because we're trying to like claw money from you guys. It just means that it covers running costs in terms of our judges and things like that, because they obviously are going to be judging it and reading it and making decisions. Very important ones, like whose story is going to be in the book in the final piece. So do send that.
If you're watching on YouTube right now, the email is right there. Submitted danucompetition@gmail.com. It's right there on the YouTube, so you can go find that and then submit your work. 1,000 words, and we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Can you just say the deadline again?
So it's going to be the end of this month. So the 30th of July is going to be like the last day. So. So get right in.
We're on the last month. Yep.
Yeah, indeed. And we were going to do it for a short period of time, and then we realised that actually we need to get more people involved. We need to get the word out, and it's the first one, so we've ran it for a little bit longer, and we actually have got some really good submissions. So it's looking forward to that. And watch this space. So get submitting, people. The QR code is on the image that I just shared, but if you're not sure or anything, you can contact one of us and we'll give you the details for that as well. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to say a huge thank you to all of you for joining us today. It's been amazing. Oh, Adam, you look like you froze it. Back again. You froze my end. It's all right. You had the perfect pose of that. It was perfect. So yeah, thank you so much. It's been wonderful. I've had a real blast this evening, and our conversation has been wonderful. Adam will be sending you all a Discord link if you haven't already got it. Do come and join us over there as well. We've got some good beta readers, and there's lots of support, and it's a very friendly community of writers just like yourselves who want to be in a community without the toxicity that can be found elsewhere on the interweb. So other than that, I am going to say, without further ado, thank you very, very much to each of your wonderful readings as well. They were awesome to listen to. And thank you, Adam, as per usual. And I will see you all next week. Take care. Bye.